Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. I'm going to say a few words this afternoon on the topic of Vedana, the Khanda of Vedana. The human being is composed of body and mind, and the mind is subdivided into conscious awareness and mental objects, or into the four khanda, four aggregates of vijnana, consciousness, perception, sanya, mental formation, sankhara, and feeling, Vedana. And it's Vedana I want to talk about this afternoon, the aggregate of feeling. It's one of the automatic mental processes that happens when we contact an object. Whenever we are aware of an object, there is an automatic reaction to it in the mind as being either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. This is Vedana. And it's classed as a resultant factor in the dependent origination, meaning that it's not volitional, it's not something we choose. It's a result of past causes. And it's actually the end of the chain of resultant factors in the dependent origination. From sense contact there arises feeling. Then after feeling there arises craving, tanha. And craving starts a new cycle because it's the first volitional factor. So this link between feeling and craving is noted by many teachers as being the critical point in the dependent origination for practice. The thing to do with feeling is just to be aware of it, to be conscious of it. This is one of the four satipatthanas, stations of mindfulness. Mindfulness of feeling, vedanusati. If we're not conscious of our feelings, this is the root of further defilements. Not being fully conscious of pleasant feeling leads to sense desire. Not being fully conscious of unpleasant feeling leads to ill will. And not being conscious of neutral feeling leads to ignorance. So if one is fully aware, awake and conscious of the feeling tone, it doesn't have to continue on into craving. You can end the cycle at that point. When then you're not feeding the becoming. You're beginning to break the cycle, and there's there is a momentary break in the cycle, and this can lead to greater things in the future. But if you miss that and slide into craving matures into clinging and then becoming, and then all the rest of suffering, birth, old age, sickness, and death. And it's successively harder to make an end, to break the chain until it's run through to the end. this is the most opportune place to break the chain, is that immediate transition from resultant to volitional, from feeling to craving. Notice how feeling yields or feeds into craving. In the ordinary course of things, beings are very much dependent on, enslaved to their feelings. The strong motivating factor for actions and thoughts is to get pleasant feeling and avoid unpleasant feeling. So if you think about it, think about the factor of craving. We crave all kinds of things and experiences, and we can make lists of our Christmas wish list of all the goodies that we want. We can make a long list of things that we crave. But if you examine any one item on the list and ask, why do I crave this thing or this experience? In the end, it comes down to the last analysis. It comes down to, this will give me pleasant feeling. So it's actually the pleasant feeling in the end that you crave, and everything else is a means to an end. Well, this is the root of craving. It's the desire for pleasant feeling, or the desire to escape unpleasant feeling. So one thing that's very critical is, just as with mental formations, is not to take your feelings so seriously. Pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling, they're just mental formation in the end. They're just sankhara, Vedana. They're just empty, dependently arisen. They have no great significance in themselves. No. They're not the important thing that the naive being makes them out to be. It's just an empty phantasm of the mind. Just a mental state, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And there's no ethical quality associated with these feelings, because they're resultant. There's nothing we can do about it. So there's nothing either morally good or bad about feeling pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling. It's just a result of past karma. It's just what occurs at this moment. It's how you deal with it then going forward. This is when the beginning of the volitional phase. What do you do next after you felt good or felt bad? Do you succumb to craving, or do you just carry on? Just recognize this is a feeling and carry on. If we look at the Abhidhamma, we can get some more understanding of the nature of the Vedana, of the feelings. The feelings are classified as having these three states, but also they're classified as being bodily or mental. Pleasure is pleasant feeling, or pleasure is either purely mental or it's physical, and the same with unpleasant feeling or painful feeling. We can have happy feeling arise entirely in the mind, or it can arise through pleasant sensation in the body. And the same with painful feeling. In fact, it's another teaching from Abhidhamma is that it's only the body sense, the sense of touch, and the mental sense, the mind, that can experience pleasure and pain. The other senses, sight, sound, smell, and taste, the feeling associated with them is always neutral. This is worth considering and analyzing a bit. We think that their tastes are pleasant, or something tastes good, tastes bad, but actually it's the mind's reaction to that taste, or a sight, the same. So there's a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and this is a reflection of that an object obtained by the eye is perceived as being beautiful or pleasant, or ugly and unpleasant by the mind. And these are not qualities that are universal. There may be some social conventions, but none of it is universal. And you can see with taste, for example, we talk about an acquired taste. There's some foods or strong flavors that you may, at one point in your life, have not liked them, and then you learn to like them. The taste hasn't changed, but the feeling associated with it has changed, because it's the mind only that is reacting, that's having pleasure or pain. The body sense, though, is stronger and it's more immediate, so it's obvious we can feel pleasure and pain directly in the body. You get stuck with a sharp stick and it's painful, and there's no debate about it, no possibility of seeing it otherwise. There's also some other things that could be said about feeling. If we look at the individual feelings, they have their different qualities. It's another teaching from Vedana that's worth contemplating is that unpleasant feeling, either mental grief in particular, we're talking about mentally unpleasant feeling, is never associated with skillful states of mind. It's always associated with unskillful states. So whenever the mind is feeling unpleasant, which means sadness, grief, despair, there is an unskillfulness present in the consciousness. Now it's important to understand this, take it the right way. First of all, recognize that until we're arahant, there will be some unpleasant feeling arising in the mind. It's only the arahant who's completely free of unpleasant mental feeling. So there's absolutely no value in feeling guilty about it, but there's also no value whatsoever in fostering it or wallowing in it. You recognize unpleasant feeling as being associated with an unskillful state of mind, so you don't validate it. It's said that when the Buddha entered Parinibbana, in common language, when his life ended or when he died, it said that all the monks who were not yet arahants beat their breasts and rent their garments and cried and wailed, "Oh, the master is gone, where is the teacher?" And the monks who were arahants, they just stood and sagely nodded their heads and said, "So it is, so the master always taught, that which comes to birth comes to death." So the feeling tone of unpleasant never has any positive spiritual value. The feeling tone of pleasant, which is manifested in different forms as joy and happiness, that can be associated with skillful or unskillful states. And it has some qualities to it that are worth noting. One is that pleasant feeling or joy acts as a karmic intensifier. And this is for both good and for bad. If you do a wholesome deed, you do a generous act or a kind act or helpful act, something meritorious, if you do it with joy, enthusiasm, makes you happy to do it, then the karma is better, it's stronger, you're making more merit. But if you do it with just a dull mind or a sense of duty and just with a neutral mind, basically, then it's still good karma, but it's less, it's not as intense. And it's likewise with an evil act. If you do something harmful or cruel or selfish, then if you do it with relish, with joy, if you laugh as you twist the knife, then the karma is worse. You're making worse demerit than if you do it cold-bloodedly, calmly, neutral. It's still a negative karma, but it's less powerful. So joy acts as a karmic intensifier. As you're investing more of your mind into the act. And joy as piti and sukha are jhana factors. Piti is a factor in the first and second jhana. Primarily the second jhana is noted for piti, which is translated as rapture or joy. It's an uplifting, joyous spirit that has a very marked effect or correlate to the body. So feelings in the body, pleasant feelings of uplifting or tingling, spine rushes, this kind of thing. This is piti. And sukha is a more refined state of joy. It's often translated as bliss. It's associated primarily with third jhana. This is a oceanic happiness. There's nothing thrilling about it. It's very calm, but it's very expansive. And it doesn't have any marked bodily correlate except that the body feels completely at ease. There's nothing moving about it, nothing exciting or thrilling as it is with piti. It's like oceanic kind of bliss. This is also classified as one of the bojjhanga, or enlightenment factors. So happiness is an enlightenment factor. So there's obviously all kinds of positive qualities that can be associated with happiness, pleasant feeling. It's also to be differentiated according to the source. Pleasant feeling that arises through the senses, through sense objects, is not as powerful or profound as internally generated happiness in jhana. The Buddha was once in discourse with a Jain monk who was practicing self-mortification, various kinds of self-torture, on the theory that this would burn off all his bad karma and he would have a happier rebirth. And the Buddha criticized this theory in various ways, and this ascetic came back at the Buddha and says, Well, we teach that pleasure comes from pain. What you're saying is that pleasure comes from pleasure. And if that were so, then King Bimbisara, who enjoys the 5 chords of sense pleasure, would be an arahant. Now, King Bimbisara is taken as a type in a few of these stories as being the worldly, sensual being. He was an Indian Maharaja, probably one of the stations of being a human being in history that has the most opportunity for sheer indulgence of all 5 senses. Indians knew how to party, and Maharaja had unlimited power. And Bimbisara was a benevolent king, but he was known to be a sensualist. He enjoyed his harem and his food and his wine, music, and everything. So the Buddha said, well, can King Bimbisara sit motionless for 9 days, wrapped in the highest bliss? Because I've done that. And oh no, Bimbisara can't do that. So the bliss enjoyed by the Buddha surpasses that of King Bimbisara, because it's on a higher plane. The happiness, bliss that arises from deep meditation, from jhana, is on an entirely different level. It's in the rupa loka, the realm of form. So it's on a different plane from happiness that arises from sense objects. So there's a clear distinction made. But although happiness can be taken to this level, and this is the peak of Vedana, of happy or pleasant feeling, it still is surpassed by upekkha, equanimity. This is considered the highest potential of a spiritual quality in the feeling tone is developed upekkha. You have to understand this neutral feeling is also on a spectrum and has different modalities. If it's not conscious, if it's just ordinary neutral feeling, this can be experienced as dullness, boredom, lethargy. This is a water buffalo equanimity. It is definitely not a high spiritual state. It's if one is half asleep, not awake, then this neutrality of feeling is a natural thing to slide into, but it's not the same thing as the spiritual quality of upekkha, because there's no consciousness, there's no mind applied to it. It's just dullness. It isn't a refined neutral feeling so much as just a lack of feeling, just a dullness. But upekkha as a spiritual quality is something that occurs also as an enlightenment factor of Bojjhanga, and it's the state associated with 4th jhana. The highest of the form jhanas is based on upekkha, the feeling of neutrality. So it's beyond bliss. It's a more refined state than bliss. It's a great peacefulness. It's a profound peacefulness. It's the mental state quality of fully awake upekkha. It also is the defining characteristic of the highest stage of the vipassana path. the stage of equanimity about formations, which is not yet full awakening. It's not liberation, it's not nibbana, but it's the place from which awakening can occur. It's the last stage one can reach by striving. The work is done at that point. You're there, you just have to sit there and let it unfold. And there's no sense in the mind of making an effort. There's no sense of meditating, although the meditation is perfect, nothing is missed. There's no effort needs to be made at that point. It's just happening, it's just unfolding. And the defining quality there is equanimity. Because this means, equanimity here means equality of objects. Whatever arises to the mind, whether it's something extremely subtle, whether it's trivial, mundane, commonplace, or whether it's something glorious, visions, wonderful experiences, the mind is not shaken or moved. It treats everything the same. This is just an object of consciousness. And the penetration of the three characteristics is very strong. There's just a sense of everything being empty and impermanent and imperfect. The particular quality of equanimity here is, in Pali, is called tatra manjatata, which is translated as specific neutrality. A literal breakdown of the word form would yield the phrase middleness about that, or being in the middle about that. The tatra is that. So this is the specific aspect. The mind has this specificity, it has a sharpness in noticing. So this object at this moment, it's not a general fuzzy kind of neutrality. There's this one object in consciousness at this moment, and the mind is in the middle about that. It's not leaning towards or leaning away. It's not succumbing to fear or fascination. It's sitting in the middle, like a rock, steadfast. And the objects are specifically known, but they're not engaged in, they're not taken up, they're not identified with. So the mind is very light and fluid. And the body feels quite at ease. And this is equanimity about formation. So this is the highest, noblest form of upekkha, of equanimity. And probably the most, you could say, the most valuable, or noblest state of the feeling tone possible. This clarity of fully awake upekkha. So we can see that the quality of neutral feeling has this vast range, all the way from the dullness of a water buffalo up to the refinement of upekkha, of formations, state of the highest stage of vipassana one can reach by effort. So to kind of bring it around back to first principles, the thing to take away, to know for practice, is to be aware of your feelings and be conscious of them, and don't imbue them with undue importance. They're just feelings. And so don't get lost in, led astray by chasing after pleasant feelings or seeking to escape unpleasant feelings. Just be aware of them. This is pleasant, this is unpleasant. And don't succumb to boredom or dullness with neutral feelings. Just, be present with the mind as in in all conditions.
Adabaya, Daba Kataya, Sadhu Karam, Dadamase,
Sadhu, 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 Namo Buddham.